Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 4 of our Lenten series, Sunday School. I am Stacy, your host and guide through this program. I hope that you are enjoying everything that we're doing so far. Today, our lesson comes from the book of Luke. It is chapter 12, and it is verses 13 through 34. So let's get to it. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who sent me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told him this parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things that you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it was with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God." Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse or barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to the span of your life? If then you are not able to do so small a thing as that, why do you worry about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of those. But if God so clothed the grass on the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not keep striving for what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying. For it is the nations of the world that strive after all these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, strive for his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourself that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, there where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So let's talk about this story. Jesus told the story about a farmer who was very successful. His land was producing more crops than he could even store or contain. The farmer chose to keep all of his crops to himself. He thought if he stored his wealth, he wouldn't have to worry about his future or work for years to come. He tore down his barns so that he could build bigger ones and hoard all of his crops. But then the farmer died before he even had a chance to enjoy his enormous savings. He had stored up treasures on earth, but did not build up treasures with God. Now, Jesus goes on to say that there's more to life than just food and clothing. Jesus knew people often thought so much about what they would eat and what they would wear. They judged others on what they had or what they didn't have, And because they were so focused on that, they missed out on other treasures that were around them. Jesus told the disciples to consider how the birds and flowers live. What could we possibly learn from ravens and lilies? Well, do you think ravens and lilies worry about storing up vast amounts of food? I don't think so. They live for each day and they don't worry about what's happening tomorrow. They are a part of God's creation and they do their part for the ecosystem, nature, and imagine what it would be like if birds could store up large amounts of food that they need. It would be really, really strange. Yeah. So if the ravens were storing up all their food, which would be the bird seed and the nuts and little worms and stuff, if they were stockpiling all that stuff, what would the squirrels get? And what would the other birds get? Imagine if the lilies, the flowers, they soaked up and hoarded all of the nutrients from the soil. How would other plants grow? What would happen to the trees? The ecosystem, or our system of nature and how everything's connected and grows together, would completely fall apart. And so that's why nature can be considered one of our greatest treasures, because it's a whole system that works together. If we spend our energy on treasures that will last and we trust in God for our needs, does that mean that it's wrong to save our resources? No. God wants us to be smart. He wants us to be wise with our money, with our privilege, and our property. And when you do that, that's called being a good steward. And when we use our privilege, our money, and our possessions, and our property for things sourced in love and justice, then there's less worry in the world. We know that our community gets fed, they get clothed, they get sheltered, and they get loved. So let me ask you, I'm famous about my questions. What would happen if the farmer had kept what he needed, but then gave away the crops that he didn't need? So he only kept what he required, and then he gave away the rest. What would have happened? And what kinds of, now remember, we're talking about treasures. We have over here, do you remember? These are our visible, physical treasures that we can see, our possessions. That's in this treasure chest over here with the big padlock, remember? And over here, we have our invisible treasure chest that has our invisible treasures in it. So what kinds of invisible treasures could that farmer have stored up had he been generous with his crops? What could have gone in here? And whose lives would have been changed if he had done that? Would have been one person, a whole town, the whole world? Interesting to think about. And how do you know when it's time to share your savings? How do you know when you're collecting something that you have enough and that you don't need to get any more of it? Where's that line? What makes you say, I have enough? And I'm going to put this maybe put it in the context of chocolate or or your favorite candy. Imagine every day you get a little bit more of your favorite candy. At what point do you say, I have enough? Give it to someone else. All right. Today's activity, again, is another, it's not a craft, it's kind of a discussion and something to do together as a family. And it is called, What is in Our Barn? Now, many of us have large collections of items that we have collected over time and have in our homes. And perhaps you have a vast barn, okay, so we're calling our home or wherever we keep our collection, our barn, like the farmer did with his crops. What is your collection of? Is it books? That's mine. Toys or stuffed animals? That's my daughter, Sarah. Magazines, board games, kitchen tools, figurines. What else did people collect? I know people who have collected marbles and doorknobs. People collect a lot of interesting things, maybe like antique plates or teacups. There's all kinds of things that pique people's interest that they start collecting. So if you asked people in your family what they collect, might be coins or stamps. Find out what their little collection item is, and then take a look at them. Like, pull it out. Baseball cards, Pokemon cards. I know there's all kinds of cards being collected right now. All I can think of is Pokemon, though. But take a look at those collections. Are they huge? Are they like the farmer's crops where it's just enormous and you're holding it all on your own just for you? Or is it a reasonable collection where you feel comfortable that you have enough and you give some away? What do you do if you decide that you have too much? I know when I moved into my house, I had boxes and boxes and boxes of books. So many books. And I finally came to the decision that I had too many. And it's a hard thing to do when there's something that you enjoy and love so much, and it gets to a point where you realize, maybe I should share what I have with other people. And so I went through and I kept the most important books to me, and the ones that maybe I've read a couple of times or weren't as interested in. I gathered them up and I took them and donated them to the library downtown. So what would you do with your excess? If you have a lot of toys or you've outgrown some things, what would you do? Where would you take? Would you take them? Would you put them in the trash? Would you donate them? Give them to a friend? What would you do? And no one can really make this decision for you. You have to look at your own things and decide. Now, your mom might come in and go, wow, you've got a lot of stuffed animals. Do you really need that many? Hopefully, your parents ask for your permission or get you involved in the decision-making process of what to do. And so, in that sense, who would benefit from your generosity, from you getting to the point of realizing that you have enough and you want to share? Sharing is so important. So that's what I want you to do this week. I want you to get together with your family and find out what those collections are and look at them and decide, are they too big? Are they just the right size? Are you still starting out? And if you decide they're too big, what are you going to do? Let me know. I would love to know what's going on with this whole thing in your life, in your family, in your community. Okay, that's all I have for you today. So let's go ahead and we'll close out with our prayer. Creator God, you made a world with abundant resources, enough to feed and clothe everyone. Help us to trust you for the future, to use our resources well, and become generous people so that everyone will have what they need. Amen. Well, thanks so much for joining me once again. I'm so happy that you make the time to spend with me, and I hope that you're walking away with some very nice lessons. And have you had those great conversations with your older folks? Did you learn more about your family? Have you been loading up your invisible treasure chest? I sure do hope so, because you are wonderful, and I'm so happy that I get to be in your world. All right, have a great week. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.